What up, Kim folks? It's Mike D. What's good? Welcome to Blazi Blah, where we connect, build, and break bread. And guess who's in the motherfucking house? Let's go! I am so excited. And you're wondering, who's this? Who's this? Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Michael. It's so great to be here.
Yes.
We did break bread. We had a great lunch
That was good bread.
Really good bread. If you haven't been to Chez Savon, you gotta come. Right? My name is Camille Fontanilla. Born and raised on the east side of San Jose.
Executive Director of
SOMOS Mayfair.
And a great community leader in the local community in San Jose. Specifically what area?
Specifically east side.
That's what's up. I appreciate the work that you do, by the way.
Thank you.
And especially this month is Women's History Month. And March 8th was specifically International Women's Day. And across the globe, it is known as International Working Women's Day. And so welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'm excited that you asked me to come.
For sure. But yeah, I'm hella full, by the way. So we went to Chez Savon, and of course, the usual, I had the amok. Thank you for...
You have to eat together.
For sure. But that was really good, and it filled me up, and we had some leftovers, so definitely that's going to be my dinner. Yeah. So you were saying you've been there for a minute, like you've been going there.
You know, I was born and raised here in San Jose, and my mom worked at San Jose State for 20 years, so that was her spot. And so she's been bringing me there throughout my entire life.
Since when? Like, how old were you?
I think probably I think my earliest memories are around 5.
5. Wow.
And so when we were talking to the owner, he said he's been around since what, 1987?
7, yeah, 87. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. That is a staple meal in our family.
Yeah.
Sure.
Staple for me, definitely. And anyway, we just found out that he's actually selling frozen.
Yes.
The frozen amok, so you can steam it yourself. Just in case the folks are interested, of course, I want to help the neighbor in regards to the current condition of restaurants in this pandemic. And
so many people are hurting right now.
Let's go. Sure. Okay, but before we start, we're starting, and my first question is always, what is your migration story?
My migration story is tied to the historical context of this country.
Okay, break it down. Let's go. Break it down.
So, my family came here by way of my aunt, post 1965. She came here to be a nurse through an H-1B visa.
Okay.
And my uncle also came here to serve in the Navy
during
the Vietnam War. And so they opened up the opportunity for my grandparents to come here, who then opened up the opportunity for my mom and her other siblings to come. It's interesting in that with my mom's family, all of us have landed here in the Bay Area. My dad's family is all over the globe.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my mom came here when she was 13 years old.
13?
13.
Wow.
So she grew up here. This is, this is very, this community is very much a part of who her identity is. Yeah. My dad came here in 1982, the year I was born.
82.
By way of my mom petitioning him to get married.
So how have you actually have a conversation with your mom and dad in regards to the amount of separation, and how is that struggle?
Yeah, I think it comes up a lot. I think the separation issues really come around with my grandma coming here earlier than her youngest kids, right? She was brought here by her older children who were already working. But she had to leave her younger children, my mom included, for over 3 years in the Philippines. And I think that's a story that many of us know. And the implications of that and the generational trauma that gets handed down from that is something that I think we know deeply in how the trauma manifests itself, but I don't know if we always talk about it out in community.
Well, let's break it down. But this is what migrants go through. And I think in terms of Filipinos in America, statistically, Filipino youth has one of the highest rate of depression.
Right.
And Filipino women have the highest rate of suicide ideation. So this comes with us being a migrant and coming to a new space, new country, new language, new culture, and trying to balance dealing with the house and having, coming to a new place. And so this is real. So for the folks that are going through, and understanding the mental health issues, and it's rooted in our migrant as a migrant, this is what we go through. And so just to let folks know, you are not alone. And we have to destigmatize the idea of that seeking help is a bad thing.
That's right.
Like we all, in some sense, go through a lot of things, and it's a must that we seek out help. And me, I do work in a community. I'm always open myself to like, hey, if anyone want to reach out to me, just want to Blazi blah and talk like this.
Just talk. You know?
Yeah, it helps. And sometimes it's easier to share someone with someone that's a stranger.
I think that's what happened. I think we just started talking to each other as strangers.
Right.
The first time we met, right?
But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, like the historical aspect of our migration, and whether it's to the farm workers from Hawaii to the coast of California or to the military. My family was from the military. 1920s, one of the first to join to the Navy. And so we have a historical, how my family got to the U.S. and also, yes, the nurses. And I want to highlight this because the need for the labor on the first world countries.
Right?
Yeah. So
and the exploitation of that labor.
And that's what we need to address. Let's go. But yeah, like, have you actually had a conversation with your mom and dad, and what was their experience like as a migrant?
Yeah, I think, for my mom, because she was 13, a lot of her stories that she talks about is the lack of acceptance as a youth coming into this community, right? Not speaking the language, not being able to make friends, being perceived as different, and then educators in our school districts telling her that she wasn't going to amount to anything, or she just needed to go to, at that time, junior college was perceived as a negative thing, right? And so not really championing students to, reach their own personal potential, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of her stories are around that. My dad, who came much later in 1982, his stories are really around, he came here, and I think his first job was as a bar back, making $3.25 an hour.
Okay.
And, he didn't get to finish college because he was in the Philippines, and he was, I think, he was halfway through his college education, and so he came here and took to tech, right? Like, he immersed himself into tech. You come to Silicon Valley, and what do you find? And so I think for me, it's been like this duality of reconciling, you come to this country because of labor, because of opportunity, and in some instances you're rewarded for it, and it comes along with the whole model minority myth and all of that, and then in most cases it's exploited too.
Yes, right? Yes. In essence, like like the first world country benefits from all our labor, and yes, we benefit from it, and we're able to survive.
We're able to send money back to our families.
Yes, yeah.
But it comes at a cost, right?
That's what it is. And so, like you work with migrant communities, by the way. And so, yeah. How is it working with migrant communities and understanding your own migration story, and how does that like really come together?
Yeah, actually this job wasn't what I had intended.
A lot of us don't have intentions of what we're doing now, but things happen.
Yes, I think things happen. I think when I was younger, I don't know, marine biologist, superior court judge,
okay.
Like all these things came up. But it was in college, and I think it's really important to uplift the importance of ethnic studies and critical race theory.
Yes.
Because when you grow up in a progressive place like San Jose, and you see that multiculturalism is celebrated through food and dance and festivals, I think what you miss without critical race theory and ethnic studies is you miss the oppression and the systemic institutional racism that happens, right? And I didn't learn any of that until I was in college. And so I think growing up, knowing my parents' histories, knowing that when I was first born, we lived in a home with 3 other families, which were my aunts and uncles and their kids and my grandparents. And throughout the years, as our family experienced upward mobility, we were able to open our home to my parents' siblings or nieces and nephews to also come, to America.
That's what we do as Filipinos.
We open our homes, we offer food, and I think all of that was part of my upbringing. But you also you experience that mobility as well, right?
Yes.
And so you find yourself in a place where you have privilege, and you get to go to college, and you do get to buy some nice things. And so I think in my youth, I didn't recognize some of that oppression, or I forgot some of the things that I was born into, right? And so when I went to college and, Professor Michael Omi or Professor Maldonado at UC Berkeley in the Ethnic Studies program, they were able to uplift those histories and those narratives and really help me draw the connection between my very specific family's stories to that history. It really opened my eyes. And I think right before graduation, I was actually supposed to be a journalist. I was working for television stations.
Okay.
I worked here in the South Bay and then also in San Francisco for TV stations.
Okay.
So I actually thought I was going to go be a journalist. But right before graduation, I was talking a lot to Professor Omi about just Asian American studies and, the Filipino experience. But Professor Maldonado in the Chicano Studies program, he said, young people of color often don't get accepted to UC Berkeley, and a smaller percentage of you actually graduate. So what are you going to do to go serve that community that got you here?
Right.
And I was like...
put the challenge out. Let's go. That's what's up.
I was like, what are you talking about? I was going to go make some money.
Which we all try to do, but someone challenged you.
Trying to do, right?
And someone challenged you.
Someone challenged me. And so I think that night I started to look for nonprofit jobs. My first stint in the nonprofit world was actually for Kidengo, which is a child development agency that offers childcare for low-income families. And that was really helpful, I think, both in understanding systems and understanding who gets access to childcare. And if you're an undocumented family, for example, how do you navigate through a system where resources are for some but not all, right? And so I think that was very much foundational to my thinking of how all these systems work. And then on a personal level, I love that job because I learned so much about child development, and I think that helps me be a mom.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from my grandma and my mom, but knowing child development milestones and things, that job was foundational for that.
In general, in terms of, it's good to learn from other people's practice and your own practice, and we learn as we practice. But it's important to know also the theory. Yeah. The theoretical aspect and how we practice it, and then how you practice it on a particularity and depending on the condition, and then that's how we learn. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's how we learn. But I'm curious before we move on. As I'm trying to picture you as a journalist. You know, you be like, I wanna be like, this is Camille Fontanilla, I'm trying to picture that. Do you have one of those things?
No, I don't have one of those. I didn't get that far in the program.
I'm like, go ahead. I want to see. I want to. Hello, this is like NBC7, you know what I mean?
Good afternoon, this is Camille Fontanilla from San Jose.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're here on location, you know, like that.
We're here on location.
Yeah.
On commercial.
Yeah, I'm just trying to picture, we all have dreams and we all pursue things, but I think on that pursuit, on that path, we learn so much more, and there's a lot of fork that happens. And decisions are made that leads us to where we at. I
mean, I couldn't be more grateful for where it ended up, right? Like that first nonprofit job led me to wanting to get more involved. Kidengo didn't focus on immigrant populations. I mean, they served them, but it wasn't a focus area. Yeah. And I think it was, I don't know, my first May Day march way back when, where I met some folks, I think people that you know, and then also people that work at SOMOS that brought me to this work, deep place-based work on the ground in neighborhoods that are primarily made up of people who've migrated from all over the globe, who don't have access to resources, who are often overlooked, but who are driving the Silicon Valley economy. Right?
Yeah.
Like everything is happening off the backs of the people that we work with. And so I think at the same time, my cousin was being affected by his own detention and potential deportation. And in this scenario, it had to do with a clerical error, right? Like his family didn't understand that they had to file specific paperwork when he was 8 years old. So when the rest of the family became citizens, he thought his paperwork was done too, and it was not.
Naturally,
right?
Like process and okay.
Yeah, and when just over the years, different issues and systems and lack of opportunity, just kind of just compounded on each other, and he faced the criminal justice system, which then led to detention and almost deportation. And it was in that process of finding him legal counsel, visiting him at the county jail, realizing nobody's speaking our languages in these systems.
Yeah.
No one is treating us like humans
Right.
in these systems, right? And so that was like the decision I made to move away from a nonprofit that does good work, but going to another nonprofit that has very specific work for a very specific population. And I think what I love most about my work at SOMOS is I always tell my staff, like, if you have a good idea to change systems radically, whether it's policy change or program, throw it on the wall. Like, there's no barriers here, right? Like, we don't have to operate within the confines that others have set for us.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's the stuff that I find most exciting about our work.
Yes, and me as a community organizer, we work with SOMOS Mayfair, and specifically you. And thank you for offering up the space and the resources that you all have to the grassroots that are doing work also, and so we can be able to work together. And so I think there's one thing. I think there is this military industrial complex. There is a nonprofit industrial complex.
That's right.
And I think in a sense, in the way I see how you operate your space is that you are doing the grassroots level of organizing and involving the community in the decision that will benefit them. And so that's what I love and see about the work that you do.
It's so hard.
It
is not easy.
For sure.
This is not easy work. It's not for the faint of heart.
It's not glamorous at all. But it's beautiful work and it's a beautiful struggle.
It is.
Yeah. I'm curious though. What was like that first May Day that you participated? First of all, May Day is International Workers' Day on May 1st. It is a global thing that happens across the world where we celebrate the workers and the struggle and the victories that they have achieved throughout the world. And so,
May Day is a part of my life.
So how was that? What was that like?
I can't remember what year that was. I can't even,
I'm taking you back. Rewind.
2009?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, or 10, somewhere in there.
Okay.
It had to be before 2010 because I came to SOMOS in 2010. And it was that May Day where I started to make these connections with folks.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how was that experience being like on the street, your first time?
Oh, you know what? So random. I'm just going to say it was random. Okay. I tried to get cousins and friends to go. I wanted to go because we were right in the middle of working on my cousin's case.
Okay.
And I felt like I can work on the individual case, but like, this is something that massive amount of people are being affected by. So I got to take to the streets, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to come with me. So I was like, I'm just going to go by myself.
Yeah, and you went by yourself.
So I went by myself. I parked my car, I think at like the old Mi Pueblo, which is now Cardenas on King and Story. And I just started marching, and I found a group of Filipinos because I saw the Filipino flag. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like march with them, whatever. And we marched the whole way, and it was amazing. And there was music, and I did not feel scared at any moment. And I thought it was one of the most beautiful expressions of being from San Jose. That we can take to the streets, that we don't have to feel like it's an oppressive state, and we can like enjoy it. Like it can be fun.
Yes, yes.
And why I say random is on the way back. Like I didn't want to walk all the way back. That was really far to walk one way. I didn't want to walk back. But I didn't like really know anyone. But the crew of Filipinos that I met that day were like, just hop in this car. And I was like, oh, okay. I kind of know you now, but not really. But I was like, okay,
I just met you.
I'll jump in your car. And then on the way, they're like, we're going to go pick up a kitten. We're supposed to adopt a kitten today. Okay. So I went with them to adopt a kitten.
Let's go.
Random, completely random, but so beautiful too.
Do you remember who were they?
You know what? We lost touch. I mean, I think they were younger than me. They were student youth, and they were kind of just like, okay, ate, bye, bye.
But yeah, if you ever been in May Days or the different mobilizations, and you see a group of Filipino organizations it's definitely fun.
It's fun. It is fun.
We get down. All this, we redirect our anger and frustration and turn it into the love that we hope to celebrate what we would to build. You know what I mean? So we're out there like, yeah. Is there a favorite chant that you like? What's your favorite chant when you're out there?
I don't sing.
You don't have to sing. It's a chant. Go ahead. Is there a favorite?
This is not my jam.
Okay, what's your favorite chant? What's your favorite chant?
Oh man, which one do I like? I just remember the moves because I like the dance. The one where we go up and then we go down.
You go up and down.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
I like trying to remember the words, but I will say, like, to go to my first May Day and be way in the back and like kind of hidden. I do remember a May Day. I was marching with people, like we were all like, interchanging. People from Powys were there. And I do remember someone handed me a megaphone at one point, and I do remember like dancing and actually singing into the microphone, and I'm like, but it's liberating too.
It is fun, and to be with the people and to be with them in terms of the demands that they are asking for, and just, I think that's what I share. Like when I'm around with people, it's the best feeling.
I'm craving that so much in this pandemic.
Right? Like
I am. And my son he's almost 9, and he has probably been to 6 or 7 May Days now.
Yeah.
We have a new one, and I'm like, Miles went to his first one in my belly.
Yeah.
We missed out on last year.
I remember.
Because it was the pandemic already, and now I don't know. Like, I don't know if we're going to actually be able to have one this year. And so, like, Cameron not being in her stroller for the first one, it's a part of, I consider things part of our annual ritual, both as a community and as a family.
Yes.
And I would say that day is one of those days, and I'm anxiously awaiting until we can get back to it.
We definitely miss being with the people. Yeah. So 2020 comes, pandemic hits. How has that impacted you personally and also professionally in terms of the work you do in the community?
Yeah, personally, it was really hard. When it first happened, I was about 7 months pregnant. And I remember, me and Ryan getting the call that our son's school was shutting down without any date of reopening, and he's still at home, right? A year later. And we made a concerted effort that afternoon to go grocery shopping. And I remember, like, we were still pretty far from delivery, but I still bought diapers because I saw people hoarding diapers. And I was kind of like, oh my God, I think I'm supposed to grab diapers.
Right.
And yeah, I think, preparing to have a child enter during a global pandemic is just nerve-wracking. And I think at the beginning, I was told that maybe or maybe not Ryan wouldn't be able to be in the room for our baby's birth. For sure, my mom wasn't going to be able to be in the room, and she was there for the birth of our son. And so, like, there was a lot with that, And then I think, thankfully, we had a healthy baby. Cameron's almost 9 months now, or actually almost 10 months now.
Good Lord.
It's so fast. But, like, I think it's the isolation, like our family, but our people are not meant to be in isolation.
Right.
And so the fact that family members haven't met her yet, that's really hard.
Yeah.
And then because of, my broader family and my networks and community, like, man, she hasn't met anyone yet. And that's just crazy because, like, Miles knows everyone in San Jose, And,
he's all over the place.
That has its implications too, for sure. But I think that has, on a personal level, that has been hard. On a professional level, when you're, this deep in the neighborhood, like we've lost people. We've lost organizers and community members directly to COVID. We've lost young people to suicide because, of the isolation and the depression. And it's just, I do feel like my team has been, and myself, have been running from, fire to fire. And at the exact same time, right? Like, this is a moment in time where the fractures of our systems have been seen for what they are.
Yes.
Things that some of us have known forever, but are now more publicly seen. And, there's an immense amount of movement building that has already been happening, but there's a window right now to get in too. But to meet the immediate needs of community members who are dying at a disproportionate rate in our neighborhood, right? Because they're the essential workers. They're living in homes with 5 to 10 other families. To meet their immediate needs, and then also to answer the call of, like, deep systems policy change right now it's having an effect on myself and my staff. Like, you can see it. And it's also in the context that, like, our own families are losing jobs. Our own family members are dying too, right? And so, yeah, like trying to manage that. I mean, that was my conversation with my whole director team this morning. Like, how do we hold this beast that's happening, and how do we get what our community needs, not only right now, but systemically, right, into the future for generations. So.
No, that's real. Like, there's direct needs at this moment in time, and it's a must that we figure out together as a community to make sure that these needs are delivered to where it's needed. And so then, with the systemic issues that at play, there are things that work that we also want to change because we don't want it to continue. We don't want the Band-Aid, but we want to figure out how to just change the system.
I think one of the things I'm really proud of from this summer, like right before I went on to maternity leave, was, you know, working with the East San José Peace Partnership to help raise money for the emergency fund. And it was an emergency fund that was really focused on individuals who could not get access to other forms of financial support. So they're not going to get money from the federal government, right? And it's our people, right? And I think one of the things that made me happiest when I came back from maternity leave is I saw that, I think, if I looked at the right document, Powys got some money from that. And that was like the hope of that work, is that it doesn't have to be all generated for one organization or one ethnic group, but like if we think about this as a community-wide need, and we feed that fund, and then we ask the people who know people on the ground to put out the money, then it will go to the people who need it the most. And so like, and now I'm finding that, you know, members from Powys and members from other Filipino organizations are showing up at county meetings, and that's amazing, because then that's when you get to the systems change too, right? Yes.
I do want to highlight, this is one aspect of neoliberalization where the government, where it's supposed to look out for its citizen, is not doing its job, but redirects resources in other forms, and then say, "Oh, it's you got to do it now." You know what I mean? This is in actuality, these resources and these needs that are needed in the community. It is the government's responsibility.
That's right.
And so I do want to highlight that. So yes, we have nonprofit organizations, which is very important to deliver the direct needs right now, but we must really look into changing the system where the government is actually the one that's providing all these things.
That's right. And I think in a lot of spaces, we've been bringing up this exact point, because if the new expectation then is every nonprofit just builds out infrastructure to keep doing this, then we've just created another industry, or we've just created another system.
And that's what they call the nonprofit industrial complex. That's right. So we have to be critical also in that sense.
We have to. Like, it's not just about the resource, right?
But it is important, like, to have the organizations present in these communities. I'm lucky that I was able to get to know or be part of Anak Bayan, because if I did, I would be fucked up. Honestly, I haven't shared with her how fucked up I was.
Before, that's right. You have to tell me your story.
I'm gonna tell it right now. I mean, I've told so many times, but I'll tell you just for you to hear it and to show where the importance of these organizations on the ground to be able to help and touch people within the community. So I was already 34 when I joined Anak Bayan. So I already took in what society has taught me, which is fucked up, by the way. I was somewhat prejudiced, misogynistic, racist in some forms. And, you know, I'm not asking for any applaud for anything. And I'm just telling the story of mapping things out. So when I came into Anak Bayan and wanting to contribute whatever I have to make changes, I struggled with the transformation internally. So it's like, oh shit, I'm fucked up. Like that was a real experience. Like, so, and I want to share an example. So I used to drive around and collect coins on the side of my car. And then I see people on the streets, and I would pull up slowly. I would grab a handful, and I would reach out. They would come, and I would drop that shit on the floor.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Like, how you see me now?
I'm shocked. I'm like, Michael.
No, that's real. She hasn't heard it. So at the moment in time, like, because of what I learned, what society has taught me, like, if you're struggling, it's your fault.
Pull yourself up your bootstraps.
Right? That's the thing. And so, and my thing was like, I work hard for my motherfucking money. And the least you can do is pick that shit up. I was like, oh my God. So that's how bad I was. And so then going through and wanting to contribute, I had to I had to learn a lot and transform myself and understanding the systemic issue. I think that's what's missing in regards to the general population, that we see the interpersonal dynamics and see the person, but never see the invisible hand, is what they call systemic.
Yeah.
And so the moment that you start to see systemic issues, that is the moment of developing consciousness. And so I think one of the first time I got checked being a part of the organization was learning about my male privilege, which I had no idea or even existed. That's the real thing.
Yeah.
And so,
taking up space, right? Yeah.
Yes. I'm already loud, right? Can you imagine? So I usually I would cut people off. I would project louder. I'm already loud. I would project physically, right? And so, but people checked me, and I stepped back and I got defensive. But because I wanted to contribute for change, I really want to figure out how to really transform. And so that was one of the first lessons in terms of transformation. You know what I mean? And so from that point on, I just started to really look internally. And then and really, it's so cliche, right? Like,
that's the thing, though, right? And that's what makes this work so hard. It's so much self-transformation.
Yes.
Internal transformation while also understanding systems.
Yes,
and that's a lot, all at once.
It's not easy.
And it's painful because you have to reconcile your own stuff.
Yes, and that's why he calls it.
And it's never finished.
It's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
And to this day, I'm still like, oh. Okay, let me step back and figure out what's the best way, right? And so that's why it's called beautiful struggle.
Yeah.
And,
right.
And that's all we can do, continue to be better and develop.
And with hopes that we're laying the groundwork for the next generation.
Yes. Let's go.
That's really, yeah. That's what this work is about, for sure.
Do you have a specific story in terms of that moment of transformation?
Oh man, there's so many, and it's ongoing. Right?
Is that one significant one?
Moment of transformation.
Not as bad as mine.
I haven't had one of those yet.
Okay.
It was probably when I became an executive director.
Okay.
Right? Because I think
By the way, she's the executive director of SOMOS Mayfair. I want to highlight that. And a great community leader in San Jose, East Side. Let's go.
Thank you. I became an executive director at the age of 29. There was a lot of, I think...
You're now 32?
I'm now... Oh my God, I'm now 38.
Okay.
I think and I've been unpacking this a lot this week in particular with all of the violence and hatred towards Asians, right? There's the invisibility that so many of us carry as Asians in this country.
Yes.
And I think for me personally, growing up in some circles, I was not Filipino enough because I was born here. I don't speak Tagalog. I don't know maybe the very intimate personal histories of what it means to be Filipino, because I never lived in the Philippines, right? And then in other circles, I was too dark, because obviously my skin is darker.
Morena,
right? And so I was too dark, and things that people would say, some would make sure they would emphasize that my lighter skinned cousins were the pretty ones and I was the smart one, right? Just stuff like that, just stick with you. And so I was reading an article this week in this context around how we are invisible to the broader society, and then we also become invisible just to get by. And that in some forms, the way we are taught to move through this life is to seek educational and professional success,
Economic development.
economic mobility,
Yes.
right? And I think, yeah, it was, I went to college, I got a job, I became like every year, like there was a directorship or something, and I just kept moving and I was hustling. And I think when I became an executive director, there was a lot of external fanfare around, oh, she's like a brand new ED, under the age of 30, Filipina, woman of color from the East Side, like let's all, like, the bells go off, right? Like, she checks all the boxes.
Checks all the boxes.
And, I think shortly after the fanfare, the organizers of the East Side checked me. They came to my office and were like, this isn't happening, this is unfair. And I was like, oh shit, with leadership comes a lot of responsibility.
Yes, you're accountable.
I am accountable.
Yes.
It is not just about the influence and the reputation. Like, you are accountable to these individuals.
The very people that you want to serve.
Right. And what comes out of my mouth, I have to carry with integrity.
Yes.
And then I have to put it into action, right? And
Yeah.
that, I think that was the and like I said, it's an ongoing struggle, right? Like, we think we get a few steps forward, we get staff capacity, we support people, we build new leaders, we win a policy, and then, like, there's more, there's another system's effed up, right? And so, like, you gotta keep checking yourself, you gotta keep checking your team, you gotta keep checking systems. And so, like, yeah, I think that was probably one of the most foundational awakenings and transformations. And, I as a Filipina who leads an organization that primarily serves the Latinx population, I think it was very important for me before I took the executive director position to sit with people from the community. And I acknowledge that I don't speak Spanish. I'm not from their community. What I shared with them was that I was from the East Side. I shared with them that I knew what it meant not to have access to education or healthcare, to know what it felt like to navigate the immigration system with my cousin. And I said that with a translator on hand, and at the end, like, to be humble in this space, also shared with them that if I was not the right leader for them, because I was the interim ED at that time, that I will go find them the right leader. And I think we have to be humble enough to name that stuff too, that it's not if it's about the movement, it's not about yourself.
Yes.
And so if the community at that moment said, you know what, no, you're not the right leader for us, then I would have moved on.
You have to give them that power.
Yeah, you have to. Or not necessarily moved on. Like, I can still be in the movement with them, but I could have ceded that power to someone else.
Yes.
And I think now, being 10 years in, I'm starting to think, what does ceding power, because, like, we can't say we're about leadership development if I hold this seat in perpetuity too, right? Yeah. And so what does uplifting other leaders at our organization look like?
Yes.
And how do I start to set the groundwork for other people to take over the work,
Well, the nonprofit is a different, structure. But the fact that you are also building organizations outside of the nonprofit, this is the best way to create leaders in our community.
That's right.
And grassroots organizations are very important because it doesn't have a structure in terms of economic structure that, it's really about learning and creating leaders within those spaces and learning so they can take up more leadership and expand our power politically, socially, and economically in a sense. And so the grassroots is very important. So if there are nonprofits out there that are doing work, that have resources, it's a must that we build these links with grassroots because they are the one that are building the next leaders in our community. And so because it is a different structure, you have to like know that that they're not going to be able to come up in a nonprofit structure and come up to a leadership. That's a different pathway in a sense. But young people can take leadership.
Yeah, in any form.
And in any form, and those can happen in grassroots levels. And so it ain't easy.
Not easy. It ain't easy.
But I do want to highlight, first and foremost, you're a Filipino than a motherfucker.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
No,
I mean, you don't know how much, especially, I mean, always, but especially this week, it means a lot to hear you say that.
The very imperialist system that forces us to migrate is the very thing that makes us disconnect. It is the very thing that makes us disconnect from our homeland, our people, and it is the very thing that forces us to create our sub-identity
Right.
in the in the diaspora.
Right.
And it is the very thing that disconnects us, but it's important, which I tell everyone, no matter where you're at, if you're Filipino, yes, you have your own personal experience, which is valuable, but what does it look like to be able to throw it into the collective experience of all of us, including the majority of us? And so, that's the way to learn. Learning, in a sense, is you have to go beyond your own experience. Because if you only look at your own experience and you think you know the world because of your own experience, then you will be limited. And so I challenge people to really get to know the history of their group of people, specifically for us as Filipino people, and in a relationship in terms of context of imperialism. And so that's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
It's hard.
And there's going to be moments of like you have to reconcile it. It's disjointed. It doesn't all make sense. It's messy, and that's okay, right? Like you said, it's a beautiful struggle. It's
it's a beautiful struggle for sure. Oh my God, how are the babies, by the way?
The babies are great. The babies are great. They're healthy. They're happy. Miles is learning about who he is as a Filipino. He's celebrating it. And he goes to a dual immersion Spanish-speaking school, so he's learning that. I just exposure, opportunity is what I'm really trying to focus on with my kids.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
In regards to the current times, how are you feeling? I think you shared a little bit about it. Yeah, but how are you feeling in regards to the rise of crime against Asians? I think currently there's like 3,080 instances across the U.S. How do you feel about that, especially as a Filipino, as part of the Asian American community?
It has to be denounced at all levels. It's really scary. I think, I worry about our elders, but I worry about everyone, really, right? Women,
especially
trans
the women and the
individuals,
elders.
It's just, and across ethnicities, like people of color are getting targeted in all these spaces. And I think, someone on my staff shared with me recently, like what we can't do right now is, I think what she called it was the oppression Olympics, right? Like there's a shared struggle there. Yeah. And unless we specifically denounce the white supremacy that is at the root of all of this, if we focus on each other, like we're not going to be able to target the root, which is white supremacy. Yeah. Right. And so I think that's the thing. I think what I'm emboldened by in this time, even though there's just such sadness and grief and hatred, is that I'm starting to see people who wouldn't speak on these things start to speak up. Yes. Right? Like I said, right? My cousins who wouldn't come to that march with me 10 years ago, they are on Facebook right now, having petitions go out. They're texting and saying, this isn't right. And I'm like, yes, and so I think, how do we call in people into the movement? How do we share the carrying of some of this work?
Yes,
it's a lot
the
of
heavy work.
It's heavy work, and so how do we share the load? How do we bring people in? Because I think that's the moment in time right now that we have. Yeah.
In regards to violence against Asian, it is not limited to the interpersonal dynamics within the American society. It is globally. I want to, in terms of hate against Asian or hate against any group of people, it is always the women that are dealt with are brunt, are dealing with the heaviest in terms of that hate and
violence of all forms.
Yes,
right?
So I do want to share a statistic. There are 400 military bases wrapped around China. U.S. military bases. Now you have to picture that on a global aspect where militarization is happening in these Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, and example is the Philippines. And so when there are military in this nation, again, there's a lot of impact on the people, the community, especially the women. Yeah. And there are military, U.S. military that are in the Philippines that are setting up camps that even Filipinos themselves have no right to check in what's happening in those spaces. And currently, the U.S. since from 2016 to 2019 have given the Philippine government over $550 million. Wow. And those funds are used, and not just funds, but also military aid and training. And these resources are used to oppress the very people that want to liberate our people.
Right.
And there's like, in terms of Okinawa, there's like 28 military bases in that just one. There's area. A movement in terms of Jeju Island, in terms of militarization and so forth and so on. So in regards to the what has happened, they talked about the fetishization of women. Right. That is another form of racism. Yes. Yes. And because of this military bases wrapped around globally, not just the Asian country, but the global South, this is where the fetishization of our women of color is coming from.
Historically and now, right?
Yes.
This is not new.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
And so this is a great opportunity to bring into these conversations where people are coming in and are angry and feeling hurt and frustrated and want to share their feelings about what's happening in regards to the condition of the violence against Asian. But this is an opportunity for us to be able to be critical and bring them in closer to be able to really address and dismantle what it is, the systemic issues. And so, yeah. It ain't easy.
But, I mean, to your point, people are watching now. And if we can bring them in to understand closer the magnitude of what's happening and how we as a nation are complicit in that. It's painful to acknowledge that, but it's needed, right?
It's real. Again, back to the point, as you know, wherever you are in the diaspora, wherever your economic, you are still an integral part of the Philippines. Yeah. And again, I want to point out, and it is imperialism, the systemic issue that forces you to disconnect and not feel connected or pushed away in terms of identity. Yeah. And then being in a diasporic place, like the identity of crisis that you go through in terms of mental health, that is also rooted in the system. And so I want to remind people let's work towards building a better
liberation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's about liberation, for sure.
Yeah. I have a question. What does it mean for you to be Filipino American?
I was thinking about this question a lot
in
preparation for this conversation.
I provide people with a guiding question, so those are one of the questions.
And I think one of the first things that came up for me is there's immense pride, and the pride continues to build when I learn more about my own personal history and our country's history too, right? And so I think it's ever evolving, and it's immersing myself in that learning and then sharing that with my children to make sure that they know it's a part of them. And so one thing, I mean, for so long in my life, I celebrated the work my grandfather did himself in the Mayfair neighborhood, which a lot of people don't know about, the strength of my grandmother, and those are the people that I knew, right? Like they helped raise me here in San Jose. And I think as I got older and as I started to understand my history more, my dad would also say like that civic engagement, that spirit in your heart, it doesn't only come from your mom's side. And I would be like, what are you talking about? And he pulled out the $1,000 peso and he showed me that there's a woman named Josefa Yanes Escoda on there. And he said, she is part of your bloodline. And she was the woman who founded the first Girl Scouts in the Philippines. And she's also a heroine from World War II. And then I was like, what?
Okay.
And I didn't know that. For sure. And then I think more recently, there was an article that came out about fierce Filipinas who, have led the country through war and turmoil. And she's like one of them on there. And now I printed out that whole thing and Miles has that in his room. And like we talk about each of them now, right? And to get to know their histories. So I think it comes with immense pride. It comes with immense and continued learning. I think the other thing that I hold with it too is it also comes with the reconciliation of how we're treated in this country, right? Of not being seen, or if we are seen, it's because there's an expectation that we're hospitable, that we're always jovial, that we're always welcoming people. And that is very inherent. Like, I find myself to be very hospitable, right? And I talk to my team always, like, I will always give you food. I will open my doors, and my home is always your home. And that's just how I show up. And I find pride in that because I know that's part of our culture.
Yeah.
And then I think, again, our conversation about the hatred that's being pointed towards, people of color, indigenous people, and Asian Americans and Filipinos specifically.
Yeah.
It's just, it's hard to know that while we're accepted in some spaces, like, we will never be fully accepted by this country, even though we toil and tend and take care of people. And, that's so it's pride, and it's also like painful.
Pride, and there's struggle and understanding, like, how do we balance all those things? I did want to touch on, and I think I've shared it with the podcast, in regards to my father was a custodian, and everyone thought he was nice. He was the nicest guy. Everybody loved him because he was hospitable. He was
helpful.
Yeah, he did everything. But later, when I got older, and I came to a realization that he was just tolerant.
Yeah.
He just tolerated things more because, as a migrant working and trying to survive, living in another country, trying to be accepted as one, we become more tolerant. And at the end of the day, we shouldn't have to tolerate shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So again, like, I want to highlight the cultural, social thing is still rooted in the system.
Yeah.
And so the idea of that, and when I came to that realization, I was like, yeah, I'm a nice guy, but at the same time, we have to learn how to draw boundaries. And I think that's something, we want to teach our kids,
right,
our family, that we are kind. But I think we should really teach our young folks to be able to draw boundaries.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. When I was thinking about that, I was like, oh shit. Those are like, the transformative moments of, like, realizing the system is in play.
It is designed the way it is designed.
Yeah.
Exactly for what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I do think too, like, what I want my children to learn too is that there's this embedded community spirit in Filipino people, right?
Yeah.
That while we cannot be taken for granted and it cannot be off our backs, like, there is this collectivism that is inherent to us. And so if we move to this place of individualism and I have to get mine, that is not part of our culture.
No. But that's what the system teaches us.
Yeah.
Because as we see that to make it, you'll have to step on people. That's what they teach you.
Or you have to grab people down. Yeah,
for sure. The image of the bucket and the crab.
The crabs, right?
The crab mentality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, yes, in that condition is not natural. Yeah. We are put in a condition where we are fighting amongst each other.
It's a scarcity that has been placed upon us. Right?
When there's so much resources out there, and that's being hoarded by. We just talked about that
during our lunch break, our bathroom break.
Being hoarded,
40% of our wealth is being controlled by two people.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
No,
but I do want to give you the flowers in terms of, like, recognizing your legacy, the family bloodline, and the history of fighting.
It's pretty amazing,
That's kind of dope.
Well, and then, Miles.
That is dope.
Miles took the $1,000 peso to school, and he, like, showed all the other kids, and they were just.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That is dope.
No, it was really cool because I think I mentioned to you he goes to a dual language immersion school, primarily Spanish-speaking community. And what I had shared with his teacher this most recent year is it is really important for my son to be seen and for him to have space to show who he is. While he's here to learn about, Central America and South America, and I feel like there's an opportunity for him to embrace the culture and the people that are in his neighborhood and in his community. Like, he needs to be seen in this space too, and he needs to hold that. And so I think he was very proud to go that day and kind of show. And I came and I read some of the books you have here. I read them out loud to the class, right? And so and then the kids just get excited because they didn't know anything about our history or anything about Miles in particular. And so I think it's really cool.
I mean, we get excited when we learn something new.
Right, totally.
Imagine, you know, that's
yeah, no, that's really, that was a transformative moment
that's
as
so
a mom,
cool.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. So, in terms of just general, what has been your biggest struggle and biggest victory?
Yeah. I think struggle-wise, I feel is more of a personal one, and then for victory, personal and professional. So
Okay.
I think struggle-wise, you know, we started this by saying, like, we have to acknowledge the trauma, the generational trauma in our own families and amongst our people as Filipinos. And I think that's the biggest struggle, right, is unpacking the generational trauma that maybe our parents, our grandparents went through, and seeing how that kind of manifests itself in the way we treat each other as family members. Like, that's an ongoing struggle, right? And how do you care for the people you love, and how do you tend to that, and how do you name things so that they're not hidden and they're out in the open so that we can work through them and not carry like the mental health stigma that's attached to that. And this is like across my both immediate and extended family, right? Like all of that is there. And so how do you just work through that? That's hard. And I think that's it's been a struggle, and it's an ongoing struggle. Because there's also like the respect factor of, like, you know, your elders and, you know, not rocking the boat and all of that. And like these things have to be named so we can break those cycles and we don't pass them down to our children. Yeah. Right. So I think that's been the biggest struggle. On the victory side.
Okay, I'm ready for this. Let's go.
On the personal side, I will say, so I don't speak Tagalog, and I understand Ilocano, but I don't speak. But when my grandmother, and the reason why I understand is my aunt and uncle, my nanay, tatang, who took care of me when I was little, my child care, right? They were my aunt and uncle, but they're our child care. I just heard Ilocano so much that it's like ingrained in me, right? It's there. And when my grandmother was passing away, she was in hospice for about a week, and I was there every day, pretty much all day long. And number one, I think the greatest victory is I was there when she took her last breath, and I was so close to my grandma. And I consider that a victory because I think that was like one of the most intimate moments I ever shared with her, even though she's taken care of me since birth. Yeah. And to have been in the room for her to take her last breath, like, that was very meaningful to me. And at the same time, I was carrying Miles in my belly. So there's like all like... There's a lot of layers to that, you know? But I think in the context of what we're talking about right now and how do I hold who I am as a Filipina, that whole week, she was kind of reverting back to like deep Ilocano. And even her kids weren't understanding her. My mom wasn't understanding her. And for some reason, I could understand every single thing she was saying. And she was telling me to like bring my younger cousins into the room so she can pass down some wisdom to them, and like everything she was asking me to do, I was delivering on it. And my whole family was like, how does she understand what's happening right now? Because number one, like, you're not fluent, and my grandma was like very deep Ilocano that we've never even heard her speak before. Right. And so I think that's a victory in the sense that, like, no matter the amount of miles and oceans you cross, like, it's in you, right? And I think people say that, but I think that was the first time I ever realized that you can move the people from their land, but like that, it's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like in your core, and it will forever be in your core.
I had the same moment. I came here when I was 1987.
Okay. How old were you?
11. I'm giving up my age.
Okay, you made me give up mine earlier too.
But 87, and I didn't go back till 2017. So that's over 30 years. Yeah. And I went back, and I did an integration with the indigenous communities in the Philippines down Mindanao. And I'm not from the area. Right. I mean, I'm Tagalog. The language is Bisaya, and then with the indigenous folks, they have their own language, Manobo. But just being there for 30 days, there was this moment and feeling that I have never felt before. what I felt was, which I didn't realize till I got home, till I came back, I had this feeling of just belonging.
Right?
And I was in tears when that came. Actually, I'm getting I'm getting it right now. It's coming to me right now. It was that like, wow, I belong here. Like, this is where I belong, because being in another country, no matter how great we make it or whatever have you, you just said it. They'll never accept us. Yeah. There's always the moment of there's feelings of not belonging. And so when I felt that, I was like, that was huge, like I belong here, and I belong to like continue to fight in terms of changing the condition there.
And belonging is like everyone's greatest need, right?
Right. So imagine that, like that realization, like, wow. And so I understand for folks that are again back in the diaspora. I think we've said it before, like try not to disconnect.
Yeah.
And try not to feel that you are not accepted. People might say that, oh, you're in Filipino because you don't speak or you don't do these things. It's really a matter of you taking the time to get to know and see the history of our people, to be able to relate and relate your experience and your condition to the struggle of all of us. And I think you shared a little bit of that. And
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
It's dope. So, do you have any questions for me?
I do.
Okay.
So I guess this speaks to the professional victory that I just wanted to name really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
No, but I think it ties to my question for you. So like, I think in a lot of my work, always looking for how do we increase opportunity for people, no matter their circumstance, their documentation status. I think that has always been something that has guided me and the work that I'm really proud of.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, like, what do you see for UGAT? What do you see for the work that you're doing, and what more can we do together in terms of getting things moved in this city that we care deeply about?
I think for me, in regards to victory, I'm gonna make an example. I've been in many different organizations, and I always ask people, like, what's our biggest victory being in an organization? And people would name, the material conditions that we create in regards to providing the service, helping out, our family. That's like the needs. But I'm like, yes, those are victories. But what I tell people is that actually our biggest victory is you. Period. Because the work that we do, yes, there's a direct need that we can provide services, but it's going to take all of us to change the game.
That's right.
And so the victory, inching closer toward the victory means that winning people over. And the more you can win people over and to take and participate and realize that they have the power to contribute to change, that in itself is a victory. Yeah. And so I use UGAT as just, to redirect and to like get people interested in the culture. But in essence, I want them to some way, somehow inspire them to dig deeper and learn more about themselves as Filipinos. I mean, even in this podcast, like the things that we're talking about, it's really about like learning how we are all connected, and we're all connected to back home, and how do we empower them to make changes. And so these are the directions. Whether I make money or not, that is my goal. I mean, if money comes, that's cool. If not, I'm okay. I live simple. I have a simple life, and so. But I'm always that's always my, my direction. Like, how do I build with people?
Yep.
How do I build that relationship, trust, and be able to just that?
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Okay.
I mean, and I think you're doing it because, like, even though a lot of the things I shared with you today are a part of me, it's not until you ask these questions that, you take a moment to pause and reflect on it too.
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
These are just a collection of stories and experiences, but no one really asks you these questions. I mean, I'm proud that at SOMOS we ask these kinds of questions and that you ask me these kinds of questions. But if you think about like everyday mainstream, you know, typical life here, you know,
there's something that we're not necessarily have to think
and
about.
it's unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you lose yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, the rat race.
And in Silicon Valley, right? I mean, when it costs over it costs over $200,000 to live here. Like, it's just
I don't
crazy,
even know
right?
because I ain't got that money.
I know. It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
So, any last words, words of
last
wisdom,
words?
folks, whatever you want to say to the people that are listening?
You know, I mean, I just wisdom. Number one, we're always learning.
Yeah.
I'm always learning.
Yeah.
People are always challenging themselves to learn. So I think that's the thing, right? Like everything we're talking about, whether it's, you know, anti-racism or systemic oppression, you know, I think, especially because that's coming up a lot right now in the context that we're living in. It's not a race to figure these out. If we're not living and thinking about these things on a daily basis and challenging ourselves to be anti-racist, then we're not doing the work. And so like I think at least in my world, people are getting really exhausted because they feel like we have to figure it out right now.
Yes.
And you know, it really is about building a relationship with people and having conversations with people. We don't need the dictionary and like to come from, I mean, we talked about how theory is important. It is to understand, but at the same time, like, I think there's a lot of pressure, at least in the community that I'm hearing right now, for people to understand every word, its definition, what it means, how to apply it, how do I talk about it. And really it's about building relationship with people, like really seeing people.
Yeah.
Right?
Because that's where the drive will come. And if you have a drive, no matter the road, how bumpy or what struggle you go through, if you have that drive to impact the people that you see that you want to serve, you can go through a lot of things.
And stand with, you know, I think that's the thing, like I love about the work we do is maybe it's about service in the immediate, but it's not even that. It's about like just talking with people, getting to know them, and then seeing their leadership shine in all these spaces, right? And that's with or without an organization, like that is the goal, is for people to thrive, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank
you for having me. I'm sure this was one of your longer interviews. We just talked about all kinds of stuff. So
She's been here for like 5 hours.
I really have. I worked from here all day long.
But I think actually that's dope. So if you ever want to just get away from things and you just want to do like a work group type, you can just chill here.
I'm like, you might want to rent this space out as like,
is it closer to you?
What is it called? Like a co-working space?
Yeah, for sure.
No, I'm like 2 exits from here.
Yeah, for sure. Let me think about that.
Hey man, the hustle's real. I'm just being honest.
We're trying to survive out here. But thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your leadership in our community. And again, the executive director of SOMOS Mayfair. And again, thank you for extending the resources to the community.
We'll keep doing it together.
I
And
appreciate you.
happy Women's History Month.
Hey, let's go.